Hey everyone, welcome to My Wife the Dietitian, a weekly podcast about lifestyle and healthy eating. I'm Rob, and together with my wife Sandra, we invite you to join us on this informative yet entertaining journey through the complex world of healthy eating.
We'll cover everything but the kitchen sink. Each week we'll discuss topics ranging from how to protect yourself from developing cancer, spicy foods to rev up the libido, to caring for your palliative grandfather with Alzheimer's.
We'll also delve into more complex issues like, what the heck is oat milk? Why doesn't my butt fit into these jeans? And every guy's favorite question, will eating spinach really make it bigger? Join us each week as we strive to educate, enlighten, and entertain you.
How do we eat with high blood pressure? Why a dash of salt may not be the main problem. Rob and I discuss why diet quality is critical for improving circulation and managing blood pressure, as well as 5 dietary strategies for better blood pressure control. Episode 36, A Dash of Salt, How to Eat with High Blood Pressure. Rob, pressure's on.
Pressure's on, and I gotta say things that sound entertaining.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm hurting today, so I might be kind of squealing and moaning and groaning over here.
Too much.
Not too much salt.
No.
Too much salt water.
That's right. Lots of kiteboarding lately. It's been awesome. Great summer. Anyways, we're going to talk about a dash of salt, how to eat with high blood pressure. We're going to discuss why salt isn't necessarily the main problem for people with high blood pressure, why hypertension is called the silent killer, how diet quality is critical for improving circulation and preventing hypertension, and lifestyle factors that help reduce blood pressure, and then finally 5 dietary strategies to eat with high blood pressure.
Excellent. I have a question, and I'm not sure if it's going to be one of those questions where you give me the glare.
Okay.
And maybe I should just wait and see if you answer it through the episode, or if I should just ask it right away. That was kind of a question in itself, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. My question is, does diet cause high blood pressure, or does it, people have high blood pressure for other reasons and diet impacts it?
Ooh, let's jump right into that. Okay. I like that. Okay,
good. It's not one of those questions then.
No, that's good. Actually, 90% of the people with high blood pressure, it's primary hypertension.
Which is just a thing on its own?
So hypertension is elevated blood pressure, a disease that can seriously damage your cardiovascular system.
Right.
And trigger a stroke, damage your kidneys and other organs like the liver, and cause other issues like osteoporosis when your diet's too high in sodium and low in calcium. But hypertension, so when you asked if the diet causes it, so the blood pressure is based on how hard your heart beats and how easily your blood flows through the arteries. So you think of the water in a garden hose, and that's kind of like blood pressure.
Right, okay.
And if you have high blood pressure, so it's chronically too high, it's really hard on the heart over time, and that's why you can develop heart disease and risk factors for stroke, because the arteries there's too much pressure.
It's like you're trying to pump the same amount of water through a smaller garden hose.
Exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
The pressure's higher.
So it could be a blood vessel issue or a heart issue, but some people have secondary hypertension, and that's not due to necessarily their heart or blood vessel disease. It's basically due to something else like obesity, kidney disease, certain drugs, excessive alcohol, or hormonal disorders.
Right.
So 90% of people with hypertension, it's primary hypertension. And as I mentioned, it's the heart issue and blood vessel issue. And then 10% of people have it's secondary hypertension. So it's related to something else that's going on in their body, and that is driving up their blood pressure.
Okay. So what's the easy answer then?
The easy answer to your question, if diet can cause high blood pressure?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes.
That's kind of the question. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But other things can too.
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get to why the North American lifestyle and diet has a high proportion of people with
high blood pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's kind of going to be obvious if you've been listening to our podcast now, all the things we've talked about.
Yeah.
There's, a lot of people in North America don't have the best diets.
Right. Yeah. And actually 50 million Americans have hypertension, and only 2/3 of those have been diagnosed.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So that's why hypertension is called the silent killer, because you can have high blood pressure and have all these basically irreversible damage to your arteries and vital organs with no symptoms or no warning signs.
Right.
And 1 in 5 Canadians have high blood pressure, and 50% of those people don't know it.
Wow.
So it is, it is a big problem, and salt isn't necessarily the biggest issue or the thing that
causes it.
Yeah. It's more the quality of the diet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because, there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, I don't use a salt shaker. And that's good. That's one little bit of not, adding more sodium to your diet. But really, it's about...
Yeah, I don't use salt, but I still eat 3 Big Macs a day, so I'll be fine. As long as I don't put salt on them.
Right. Yeah. It's basically 15% of our salt intake is from the salt shaker. And that's in general, the population.
85% is from the diet.
75% is from the processed foods and the packaged foods. 10% of the salt is naturally in foods, like cottage cheese, for instance, is naturally high in salt, but 15% is from the salt shaker.
Wow, so that's pretty minor.
Yeah. It's really, there's so much to talk about with this, and that's why I said pressure's on, Rob.
Oh, okay. I'll step up my game.
No, it's all good. So I think we talked about why hypertension is called the silent killer.
Right, because so many people don't realize they have the symptoms.
Yeah, the high blood pressure.
Right.
Yeah. And there are lifestyle factors, of course, that can help reduce blood pressure. And actually, 90% of risk of stroke is modifiable, meaning you can change your lifestyle to help reduce your risk of stroke. And remember, high blood pressure is a big risk for stroke.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And the lifestyle factors, I'm just going to say them all. We've talked about them in other episodes for sure, and we're going to just focus on the diet. But so the lifestyle factors that can help reduce blood pressure is diet, of course. Right. Exercise. So not being sedentary, like moving the body, losing excess weight. Because like I said, the 10% of people have secondary hypertension due to obesity or kidney disease or other problems. Right. So if you lose excess weight, that helps reduce your blood pressure to a more normal range.
Makes sense, yep.
Lowering your intake of alcohol, so not drinking as much.
Right. That seems to be coming up every week too.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it really affects your whole system and body and aging and everything. Decreasing stress.
Yep, that
makes
sense.
With meditation or whatever methods you have for decreasing your stress level in your life.
Yeah. Nowhere does it say stress is good for you.
That's true.
Reducing your stress is always a good thing.
And actually, nowhere does it say that salt is the amount of salt in our diet is good for you either.
True. Yeah.
That we're going to talk way more in detail about that. But the other thing is becoming a non-smoker. So if you smoke, if you want to reduce your risk of stroke or of hypertension, of reduce your blood pressure, then become a non-smoker. So move towards how you were born, and when you were young, you were a non-smoker. So you don't have to be a smoker for the rest of your life. Right. So seek strategies to help kick the habit. So why salt isn't necessarily the main problem for people with high blood pressure. So 25% of the population are salt sensitive. So which means what? So 1 in 4 people, if they have an increase in the salt in their diet that can raise the blood pressure.
Oh, it's like a negative impact.
Yeah.
I
So
see,
they're
okay.
salt sensitive. So they have salt in their diet. They get more, edema, like bloating and puffiness in their ankles and their wrists, and they are sensitive to salt, and
Right.
that actually can increase your blood pressure, but it's not across the board. So there was some studies that there was basically researchers at the University of Toronto reviewed 56 studies taken over 20 years, and basically they found that people with high blood pressure should reduce the salt, or the question was, should people with high blood pressure reduce the salt? Yes, they should, but there's no need for healthy people with a normal blood pressure to curtail their salt use.
Only if it's showing that it's an issue. Is
Yeah.
that what they're saying?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's very controversial. There's another, it's called the InterSalt study. It was from 1988, 10,000 people in 32 different countries. High blood pressure was more common where people consumed more salt, especially in middle age and older people. And eating less salt would reduce rates of heart disease. So that was their conclusion.
Right.
There was another one, Journal of Experimental Biology, 1,000 people over 15 years of age. And the question was, did salt intake raise the blood pressure? And the conclusion was no. But in saying that, there's absolutely no health benefits to a diet high in salt, and excess salt impacts more than blood pressure. It increases your risk of osteoporosis. It can affect all your other organs. So it can affect your liver, damage kidneys. So there's lots of reasons that having a lot of salt in the diet is not a good idea.
It's just makes things taste good, I think, is the one benefit anyway that I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, people say, well, we need salt, but okay. So basically a human body needs about 1/20th of a teaspoon of salt
Per day?
Yes.
120.
That's all you need.
That's like a grain or two.
It's 115 milligrams is what you absolutely like the minimum. And an average sedentary person in a temperate climate is like basically North Americans are getting about 40 times that.
Wow.
Yeah. So the recommendation is under 2,300 milligrams. And that's exactly what's in 1 teaspoon of salt is 2,300 milligrams. So the average intake is about 3,400 to 6,000 milligrams.
The average intake.
Just in North America. So what people are eating, like their diet, they're taking in over a teaspoon a day throughout like the processed foods and adding salt on your food. And we're going to talk the details about what foods have salt. But does that make sense? So the average intake is about 3,400 to 6,000 milligrams.
What she said is a teaspoon or more than a teaspoon?
A teaspoon is a 2,300 milligrams.
Okay, so it's like 1 to 3 teaspoons.
Yeah,
kinda,
exactly. That's right.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it. I mean, that doesn't seem, when you think about a teaspoon, that doesn't seem like a lot.
No.
But I guess given that it's way more than what you actually need.
Yes.
Then it is a lot.
Yeah. And it's interesting because for the food companies, you mentioned that, it just tastes good. That's right. So salt is a really cheap additive. It heightens flavor of food. It reduces bitterness. It enhances the sweetness. It keeps food from becoming discolored, and it helps retain shelf life.
Right.
So like huge reasons to use salt, and it's just an easy thing. So that's why food companies use it. But because so much of our diet is ultra processed foods or packaged foods or canned foods or foods that are made with salt, then most people are getting way too much. Like I said, like 3,400 to 6,000 milligrams is kind of the average intake in North America.
Yeah, I think you don't think of your salt intake with what's in the food. You think of, am I shaking it on, like table salt?
Yes.
And you're like, well, I'm not really. I'm maybe a little bit here and there. So you think your intake is low, but there's so much salt. Like you said, 75% is in the food.
Exactly. Yeah. Within the packaged and processed foods.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
so
I think
start reading those labels. When you sort of mentioned, and it's sodium, that's what you look for on the label. When I got more familiar with reading labels, and I think you mentioned to look at sodium in certain things like soup and certain foods that are typically high in salt, I was blown away at how high the sodium level was in certain things. Like because they have the little percentage daily value.
Yeah.
And it would be like 120%, like way more than what you're supposed to have. And yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So once you get familiar with that and you start reading your labels, you'll be like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
And let's talk about the labels actually, because that was going to be later on in the topic. But since you brought it up, like we did cover it in episode 9 in label reading. Mm-hmm. But with regards to sodium, so first of all, salt is made from sodium chloride. So salt is basically 60% chloride and 40% sodium.
Okay.
But when we're looking on the label, you are looking at the word sodium on the label and the nutrition facts. And you mentioned about the 110%. Well, that basically, it's kind of like a stoplight. You think of, okay, looking at the daily value. So over 15% is like red. It's like stop, that's too much. Over 15% daily value of sodium. And then under 5% daily value of sodium is green, go. Like that's okay. That's a good, low amount of salt.
Right.
So a good rule of thumb is if you choose foods that are packaged and processed and they're under 5% daily value for a serving, that's green, go. That's good. If they're 5 to 15% DV, they're kind of caution. It's getting to be too high. And then over 15% daily value is like, okay, that's getting to be a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have this can of chicken broth here. Yeah. This is kind of why we make our own chicken broth, because then you can control how much salt.
For sure.
Well, this one is in half a cup, you get 32% of your daily value. So where does that fit on the green red light?
Well, it's like 2 stoplights. That's like a whole wall of traffic cops going, no, stop. You can't come through here. The road's closed.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's hilarious because actually looking at like food labeling, so low sodium on the label would be 50% less sodium than the regular. So you can actually look at chicken broth, low sodium, and it's still high. It's still over 15% daily value.
Even though it says 50% less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's tricky. NAS, which is no added salt or no salt added. It would be a food that's naturally low in salt. Actually, you can get chicken broth with no added salt, and it is, I think it's 3% daily value of salt. So it's very low. So that's the one to look for. And then salt-free is pretty much there's no salt in it. So no more than 5 milligrams per 100 milligrams of the food.
Right, right. I guess the other thing that we'll quickly mention is if it is one of those products that's no salts, then what have they replaced that with in order to make it taste good? So maybe just breeze through the ingredient list to see if there's other things in there that they're...
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Because maybe you're no better off.
That's true. And actually, speaking of the ingredient list, so there are other ingredients that can mean sodium that or that would affect like how much salt is in the thing. So MSG, monosodium glutamate, monosodium phosphate, sodium bicarbonate. So if those are on the label, those actually impact the amount of sodium or salt in the food.
And they have like the same effect on you as salt would.
Yeah.
But
and MSG is actually, there's a lot more effects with that because it's not a great additive to have at all.
Yeah.
It's a flavor enhancer, and it has problems with people can have nervous system issues or reproductive or
headaches and stuff.
Yeah. So it's one to not have too much of or try to avoid that.
It's Chinese food, I think, is like restaurant food a lot uses MSG, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not something you encounter much with home.
It's in a lot of
Is it
processed
food? Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, definitely. So the Salty Six, there's like this. I can't remember what organization puts out the Salty Six numbers, but there's 6 foods in most people's diet that contribute most of the salt.
Really?
Bread. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Because one slice doesn't give you too much, but there's, a reasonable amount. And then the thing with bread is people typically have about 6, they could have 6 to 10 or whatever slices in a day.
Oh, you know what's funny? I'm just thinking when we used to make bread in the bread maker, it was like a decent sized amount of salt you'd add into the thing to make a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
It was like a half a teaspoon or something.
Yeah.
Like I just remember the little measuring cup thing. I'm like, yeah, it's now that I know how much you're supposed to have.
Yeah, because you don't think bread's that salty
Not
tasting.
that you're going to eat a whole loaf of bread in one day, but...
No, but it's. I think it's just if you have bread in your diet, then just that pushes up the number of like how much sodium you're getting over the day.
Yeah, and especially if you're eating toast with breakfast and a sandwich or 2 for lunch and maybe some kind of bread thing at dinner, you're going to eat 4 to 6 pieces of bread a day, which is getting up there.
Yeah. And number 2 is pizza.
Okay, that makes sense.
You think of the dough and the topping
sure.
and the tomato sauce and the cheese, like every part of it is salty. Like
right.
Even the salami and the, if you have like the toppings that are the meat.
No wonder it tastes so good.
It is, yeah, it's really one of those really commonly eaten foods is pizza, and it's definitely one of the Salty Sixes. The next one is sandwiches. Because you think the bread, you think of the meat inside,
processed meat inside.
Yeah. Maybe cheese. So that's gonna be a high sodium or salty food, and a lot of people eat sandwiches every day. Cold cuts. So any deli meats, like ultra processed meats, not ultra processed, but processed meats with nitrates and the sodium and the fat.
Yeah.
So bologna and hot dogs and salami and any cold cuts, they tend to be really high in salt.
Right.
And that's the Salty Six. Soup is another one, because most soups, if they're not homemade, if you're buying them in a grocery store or if you're buying them in a restaurant or making them from a canned soup, then they're going to have those, the red stoplight numbers. The daily value is going to be over 15%, more like 30 to 50%.
Yeah, really high.
Like Mr. Noodles and those types of soups are really high, mostly because of the flavor packs.
Totally.
And the last one is from the Salty Six is the burritos and tacos. And that's because it's pretty common food, and you think of what's in them, the chicken, the beef, the toppings, they're so loaded with salt.
Yeah, and they're processed as well, but yeah, it's the bready stuff and the stuff that you're putting in those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like there's a theme with all those 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than the soup, but
yeah, the highly processed, ready to eat. So remember in other episodes we said convenience kills, like in the fats, grease, and oil one.
Right.
It's same with because of the salt. Salt is an ingredient that companies use to preserve the food, to make it taste better, all those reasons, and that can
it makes it bad.
Yeah, exactly. Diet quality is critical for improving circulation and preventing high blood pressure and hypertension.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the balance is usually off with the general population basically having too much sodium but not enough potassium.
Oh, potassium.
Yeah, but it's not like adding a supplement. It's basically what's rich in potassium are whole foods.
Bananas.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of the orange vegetables and fruits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So modest salt restriction is good for overall health and well-being, and eating too much salt and too little potassium increases the risk of high blood pressure. So the best way to increase your potassium is have more vegetables and fruits. The orange foods like sweet potatoes, squash, apricots, oranges, bananas, like you said, avocado. So all those, anything that's rich in potassium, it's more likely to be a whole minimally processed food, like the vegetables and fruits.
Right. So there wasn't any of those on the salty 6.
No, exactly.
No.
That's right. Yeah. So, for most people, the key to lowering blood pressure is adopting a whole foods diet with lots of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds, beans, and fish.
Right.
Right.
One thing I'll add to that salty 6, we'll make it the salty 7.
Okay.
Sauces. Sauces tend to have a lot of salt in them. So just like, like you're adding like butter chicken sauce or not so much tomato sauce, I don't think.
Yeah, well, some of them.
Creamy sauces tend to be pretty salty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And salad dressings too, maybe?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Soy sauce, super loaded with sodium.
Yeah, it's just like liquid salt almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even the light soy sauce, the light in sodium soy sauce has 30% less, but it's still high in salt.
Yeah. So start looking at that one on your labels.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing is, so the quality of the food, as I mentioned, the quality of the diet. So the balance is off. So we need more potassium, more magnesium, more calcium, folic acid, and more fiber. So you get that from eating whole, minimally processed foods.
Right. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Among populations who eat lots of fiber, blood pressure doesn't rise with age as it does in North America.
Really?
Yeah. So we're 95% of the population in North America doesn't eat enough fiber. And so there's this correlation with, so there's a study, the fiber studies. There was 46 patients with blood pressure averaging like a high blood pressure, 157 to 97, were given 7 grams of fiber in a tablet form or a placebo.
Okay.
And after 3 months, their average blood pressure went down 147 to over 92. And the placebo group, there was no change in their blood pressure.
So just from getting that, how much? 7 grams, you said?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's not a ton.
No.
That's not even like your minimum requirement for the day.
Exactly. The minimum is like 20, 30 is like what we should be aiming for with fiber.
Yeah.
Like 28.
So no other changes? They just started eating fiber. Well,
it was in a pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So that was an interesting study. There was another one, 94 volunteers ages 18 to 60. Those who ate high fiber diets had lower blood pressure than those who consumed low fiber. 11 who had been using a high fiber diet switched to a low fiber diet for 4 weeks and their blood pressure went up.
Oh, wow.
And 31 of them who had been eating low fiber consumed more fiber and the blood pressure dropped.
I think I'd want to be in that group.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like most of North Americans is eating low fiber. And our goal is to provide some dietary strategies to increase change your diet quality so that you're eating more whole foods, minimally processed with more fiber. And less of the ultra-processed foods. Yeah,
in the process of eating healthy, you're going to reduce all the things that are bad for you. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah. And with like heart disease and stroke, impotence or erectile dysfunction caused by clogged arteries or circulation issues in the nether regions, the clogged arteries are responsible for more than 60% of impotence. A high fiber diet may reduce your blood pressure and help with clogged arteries and improve your circulation everywhere, including there.
In the Netherlands.
Exactly, nether regions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's there's just so much to it that helping or change our diet quality so that we're eating more vegetables and fruits. And I don't know, have you heard of the DASH diet?
Well, from you I have.
Okay.
And isn't it a combination of the mind diet? Is that one that's...
It's similar. So
I think we talked about it when we talked about the mind diet, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So with the Mediterranean, with the DASH, with plant focused, with a mind diet, it helps to rebalance so that you're not getting too much sodium. You're getting more potassium, magnesium, calcium, fiber, and it's more of the minimally processed whole foods. And the DASH diet actually stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension.
Right.
So it was actually a diet that has evidence to suggest that it does help reduce blood pressure for people that have hypertension.
It was the Mediterranean diet, I think, that we talked about it with, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And the Mediterranean is like the DASH diet.
That's right.
It's very similar. The DASH it has a lot of vegetables and fruits, like a lot. Like it's hard for people to, if they don't eat a lot of vegetables and fruits, to all of a sudden just completely switch to a DASH diet.
Totally, yeah.
So the servings is 7 to 10, actually 8 to 10 servings of vegetables of fruit and vegetables and fruit a day.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's pretty high. And then the other part with the DASH diet is 3 servings of low-fat milk and milk products.
Okay, yeah.
And 6 to 8 servings of grain products a day, and 2 to 3 servings of meat and alternatives. That's the DASH. But I think the big thing is reducing the amount of ultra processed foods, those salty six we talked about, the prepackaged, the convenience foods. Reducing those, you naturally hopefully increase your vegetables and fruits and whole grains, nuts and seeds, leafy greens.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And low fat dairy like yogurt or milk, those can all help with changing that balance of, increasing your potassium, your magnesium, your calcium, your folic acid, and your fiber.
For sure.
And reducing the sodium.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With calcium in episode 18, Them Bones. Do you remember that one?
Oh, I remember that one.
So sodium, like the salt sodium, causes kidneys to excrete calcium.
Oh, okay.
So 500 milligrams increase in sodium in our diet, you have to add at least 40 milligrams of calcium to make up the increased loss.
Oh, interesting.
So people do say, I'm not salt sensitive, so I don't have to worry about sodium. I can have as much as I want. I can add salt to my food.
Okay, yeah.
But you're risking your bone health, basically.
That's where the osteoporosis link comes in.
Yeah.
I was wondering how that was related.
I know. So in order to protect your bones, it's wise to pay attention to how much salt and sodium content is in your food.
Gotcha.
And, if, like most people, if you eat snack foods, and who doesn't, it will not take long for you to eat more salt than is healthy, and often much more than is good for you.
Is that why I only had like a handful of chips last night? Because you're researching this and you're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, really? Okay.
You're right. Yeah. See, we eat everything. We include everything. We're taking our own advice, but we have that 80-20 rule. Like 80% of the time we're trying to eat healthy, 20% of the time we have chips sometimes, and
you got to be realistic.
Other things. Yeah. But snack foods definitely is like part of the salty six too, that we didn't mention, because in addition to the sauces that you said, think of snack foods like pretzels. And
the whole chip aisle is just, that's the highest thing on the label, I bet, because it's all peanuts and salted snack foods and the chips and the Doritos, and that's the flavoring. It's all salt based.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely
it would just be like a raw, like crunchy, bland little disc of flavorlessness.
Well, and we'll talk about what to do, like how to substitute, or what foods to start to eat that will help with that salt craving you might have.
Yes, perfect.
There was also a study that showed, so remember we talked about fiber, and I think in, episode 17, we talked all about fiber. Flaxseed, so ground flaxseed. So if you have 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed in your diet daily for 2 weeks, it can be as effective as a diuretic, which is a blood pressure medication for people.
Oh, wow.
So that's another thing, like adding some ground flaxseed to your cereal or into your smoothie or whatever, however you use it, would be a way to help rebalance your diet and maybe help with blood pressure. And you can listen to episode 33 on seeds to learn more about the flax seeds.
Flax seeds, yeah, there's pretty beneficial little nuggets.
Exactly. All right, Rob, let's do the call to action, 5 dietary strategies to help with high blood pressure.
Help lower your high blood pressure?
Yes.
Yes, we don't want to increase it.
No, exactly.
Yes, okay.
To help improve it.
Perfect.
So number 1 is increase your amount of vegetables and fruits. So if you don't eat very many, aim to add 1 to 2 servings more a day, with the goal overall eventually to get to 7 to 10 servings a day.
Yeah.
I think we do that.
It's just habit. It's just changing habits. What you eat for snacks is a big one.
Yes. Fruit.
Just finding new ways to eat fruit and vegetables. It will allow you to increase your intake.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, having fruit at breakfast and snacks, and then vegetables at lunch and dinner, that can really help increase your intake of vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, for sure.
And remember, the orange vegetables and fruits tend to be higher in potassium, which we want more of that. And magnesium, you're going to get some good magnesium in beans, so legumes and lentils, nuts and seeds. So that's a key one too. Actually, 1 ounce of nuts, in one study, 1 ounce of nuts reduced risk of stroke. So if you have 1 ounce of nuts daily, that can reduce your risk of stroke.
Oh, really? As long as they're not mega salted.
I'm just talking about unflavored, unsalted.
Right.
But yeah, nuts and seeds are high in magnesium. Leafy greens have magnesium. And there was a study about dark chocolate.
Oh, chocolate always comes into it.
So people that ate 30 calories worth of dark chocolate, which is like 1 square, and it's a dark chocolate with 70% cocoa or more. So not the milk chocolate or white chocolate.
Not Easter bunnies.
They didn't actually affect the blood pressure because they looked at that.
Right.
But the dark chocolate actually reduced their blood pressure by 5/2 points.
5/2 points.
Yeah, you know how blood pressure readings are, there's the systolic and diastolic.
Mm-hmm.
So basically
it
eating
helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eating dark chocolate helps your blood pressure.
Good
So
to know.
dark chocolate is high in magnesium. So that's one of those nutrients that we want to get more of in our diet, that a lot of people have that balance off. They're not getting enough magnesium, not getting enough potassium, not getting enough calcium.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's number 1. Number 2 is review the labels of snack foods, processed packaged foods, and look at the, try to aim for less than 15% daily value. So
Right.
reduce your, the amount of convenient, ready to eat foods.
Yeah. Just read those labels.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3 is the calcium, making sure that you're getting at least 3 servings of calcium-rich foods a day. So dark green leafy vegetables, low-fat yogurt, milk, cheese naturally has salt, but having the cheese, it has some calcium, so that's going to provide your body with some calcium, and that helps with the balance too.
Right.
And then number 4 is limit your intake of processed meats. So the salami, bologna, hot dogs, deli meats, cold cuts.
All that stuff.
Yeah. And then the last one is just try to make more homemade sauces and dressings using, herbs and spices like mustard and vinegar and garlic and lemon juice, salsa, onion.
Yeah.
So using the natural flavors.
Fresh flavors. Yeah. I've been putting olive oil on a lot of stuff lately, and it's so good because you can actually taste the olive oil. Like just on a salad, just straight olive oil. It's so delicious.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to just be like creamy dressing guy, right?
Oh, right.
That was tasty flavor, but then all you taste is the dressing, and you don't taste like the bits in the salad.
Right.
So
the nuts
this is
and seeds
a lot healthier,
veggies.
and you can taste everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. So that was a pretty full,
informative. Yeah, no, lots of information there for
Lots of-
sure.
yeah.
So that's great for people to think on.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to just improve our quality of our diet so that it will help prevent the hypertension and help with blood pressure and just overall health. It really helps.
It helps everything. Every facet of your life improves when your health improves.
Yeah, and when your blood pressure is, in the normal range.
Yeah, which is what, like 120/80? Is that kind of what we're aiming for? Somewhere in there is.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And you can test I do mine in the store. They have one of those machines. The only thing I don't like about it is the voice is really loud. So everyone in like the vicinity is listening to my whole health report, and it's kind of funny. And I mean, I have nothing to be ashamed of, but I'm thinking for some people, they might not want their weight like announced to the whole store and what their blood pressure is and their fat content and all that. So that's the only thing I don't like about those. But
I think you can turn the volume down.
Yeah.
I think there's a little button where it says volume, or you can even plug in a headphones if you have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
anyway, that's it. You don't have to go to your doctor is what I'm saying to get your blood pressure. You can sort of get a decent reading from one of those.
Yeah. And like optimal is lower than 120/80. Right. Normal is 130/85 is like up to 130/85 is kind of considered normal.
Right.
And normal to high is up to 139/89. And then hypertension is considered 140/90 or higher.
Okay. On a regular basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't freak out if it reads that once.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the white coat syndrome where you get your blood pressure goes up when someone's taking your blood pressure because you're worried, and it just artificially spikes.
Yeah. Or if you've been in the grocery store pushing your heavy cart around and you stop and take your blood pressure, everything's going to be elevated, your pulse and all that. So take those things into account.
Yeah. And there are, if it's a concern, there are monitors you can buy and have at home for under $100 that can help with if you're worried about your blood pressure, or you should definitely, talk to your doctor and get it checked regularly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rob.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. Good information, Cedra. We will be back next week with some more fun, informative chit chat.
Awesome.
All right. We'll see you then.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.